Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and of course I'm joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen, and we're going to talk a bit about Vancouver, which I just got back from, and I'll tell you, I mean, it's unbelievable what they're doing with the economy over there. They're just trying to inflate this bubble with the property market. When you just see everywhere you go, they're building. They don't have the money to do it. The prices are skyrocketing. It's almost impossible to afford to live there, but they just keep building, and you see skyscrapers everywhere under construction. I've never seen anything like it in my life, but this is what a property bubble does. Eventually it's going to burst, and they're just trying to artificially manipulate the markets at this point in time in order to make it look good, while foreign investors are coming in and buying up plots of land. And it's quite an insane thing to witness. So we're going to go into what's going on with the property market there in Vancouver and their economy, because it's alarming, to say the least. And I think the good people in Vancouver need to know what's going on, because of course they know, anyone that lives there knows that there's a problem. But I don't think people realize the magnitude of the problem. It's a huge problem. It's going to affect everyone. So John, can you go into what's going on there in Vancouver?
Yeah. Well, first, before we're going to go into Vancouver, I just want to mention a number that's just came out, and it's the household ratio for debt to actual your money that you earn. And the Canadian ratio is 165.3 right now, which is the highest in the G7 countries, by the way. It's we're the most indebted countries of the big G7 countries in the world.
And to be one of the worst in that country is saying something.
Yeah, it's not something you really wanna be, to be honest with you. And I just want to give you some average numbers, and then I'm going to go a little bit more into detail on the Vancouver housing market. But this one is interesting. This is a number from the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, and it's the recent numbers. And this is from January. This is MLS numbers, and the average detached house was sold for I think it's $1.82 million. $1.82 million is the average detached home. And then of course you got you have at 721,000, that's the attached housing. And then the condos, we're looking at around 517,000 in an average just for a condo.
Yeah, and just so you know, people, like, look at the tiny chart that he printed out here.
Hey, we
He's
got a
just trying
big
to
one.
look at it.
There's a bigger one here, guys.
Yeah.
But we'll make sure to show you the whole chart and everything, so you can see it in detail, because this chart is insane. Like, it has skyrocketed from about January of 2013. That's when it really just took off like a maniac. And just look at the chart, and you'll definitely see something is very much not very good going on in Vancouver.
And on top of that, I mean, just going back even a few years ago, back in 2011 when I kind of lived out there, I thought it was amazing back then, where the house I used to live in went for about 280 grand or something in Winnipeg, and almost the exact same model of house was in Vancouver, and it was over $1.5 million. And this is a real story, and that's in 2011.
Yep.
Now, 2016, it's much, much worse.
Yeah, well, just to give you the historical look here, by looking at this chart, the average detached house price in July of 2001 was 370,000-ish, and now it's 1.8.
Yeah.
That is insane. We're talking about a 400-something% gain in the house price. Houses are not supposed to gain within 15 years 400+%,
which is good if you're a predatory investor, where you're just trying to buy and sell real fast, but that's not good to the average person that's buying a home or an apartment or a condo. It's just crazy.
No, definitely not. And it's getting to a point where it's really bad. Like, for example, also the home ownership in Vancouver has just skyrocketed since about the same time, they said, the first quarter of 2014. It was a 21% raise in people that actually now owns homes there, and that means also a lot of more debt that's coming out and getting printed into the system, and a lot more debt that actually is chasing that real estate and then just skyrocketing it up. Well, we're gonna soon touch upon some very important things here, but that was kind of the Canadian side of things, but we haven't even mentioned, the Chinese side of it. But Chinese media has warned that Canada housing crash will put U.S. to shame. And I totally agree, because since the U.S. crashed in 2008, we just been gone through the roof. We didn't, we didn't go down with them. No, we just continued straight up. And
it's worth mentioning that China's building ghost cities. It's horrible. They're manipulating their markets so insanely to keep up with the falling the falling demand within the housing market. They're just building and building and building. They're building entire ghost cities, which we've talked about before, which is just so insane. But then their economy's on the brink of disaster. The Canadian economy, the American economy, on the brink of disaster, mostly global, and at the same time, they're buying up so much land within Vancouver, which is interesting because we owe a lot of debt to China, and when their economy goes, then they might be calling on some payment. And when you're thinking about the amount of land that they're buying up in Canada, it makes you go, I'm not saying that they're necessarily trying to take over or annex. I'm just saying that there's a reason to kind of go over something like that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of Chinese that are bought, both here in Winnipeg as well. Not as much as in Vancouver, of course, but they believe that they can get their money out of the country. First of all, because yen is getting devalued like crazy.
Yeah.
Second of all, because there's a lot of corrupt government officials that are trying to hide the money away from China. And of course, they're trying to move the money out now. Of course, don't worry, guys, because the government of BC is doing something about it. Which they're gonna fix everything here.
Which is go into this in a second, but I just want to make mention of something, that this central planning and this manipulation comes from the government in the first place. So it's kind of like fighting fire with kerosene, where we're like, oh well, there's a huge problem within the housing market, so I know what we can do. The government's destroyed this, so we'll get the government to fix it, because that's going to work so well with more central plannings.
I think you're talking about the Hegelian dialectic. There.
Problem, reaction, solution, and repeat.
Exactly. No, in Vancouver, what they're trying to do now is there will be no reprieve from the new tax on foreign buyers who have signed contracts to purchase homes in Metro Vancouver, where they snapped up almost 10% of the property sales. The BC Finance Minister Mike DeYoung said. Now the tax takes effect next Tuesday, and this was the 26th of July, so it's already in the works there. It says the tax takes effect on Tuesday, and long-term contracts such as pre-sale agreements for condos under construction and pending property purchases involving foreign buyers will pay the new 15% tax. So they're taxing it 15% when you buy a second home, or when the foreigners buy a home in Vancouver. So they think they're gonna make truckloads of money, because they see so much money coming in from Asia that they want a piece of the pie, the government, of course. If the transaction was registered after the August the 2nd, 2016, then the tax applies, it says. And of course, it's a liberal government that they're introducing out there. On Monday. Additional property transfer tax on Metro Vancouver residents that are properties that are purchased by foreign buyers again. So they're trying to mitigate it by getting a piece of the pie. Like it was the last 5 weeks in this article, it says it was $885 million in foreign investment that flowed into Metro Vancouver just in 5 weeks. 5 weeks, $885 million. That's a lot of money we're talking about. And just to go back, Josh, to what you were talking about when you were talking about those skyscrapers, there is saying that, the more skyscrapers that goes up, that's a sign of that you hit the peak.
Yeah, they're doing the
in
same
a
thing in
property
Calgary,
market.
actually, but Calgary doesn't go to the exact extent of Vancouver, where it was amazing. Even in Richmond, British Columbia, right below
Yeah.
Vancouver, just walking around, there's so many skyscrapers going up. And but what I see as a skyscraper living in Winnipeg, because we don't have the tallest buildings, is something that's like 35 stories or up, and they're building a lot of those in Vancouver, a
Yeah.
lot, and just these giant glass buildings. And they're doing it in Richmond. And actually, who really likes debt, John? Someone who really enjoys playing
Central
around
bankers?
with debt. Well, of course, they thrive on that. But someone that really enjoys playing around with debt is Donald Trump. And guess what? They just built the new Trump Tower in Vancouver. They're about to be opening it right away. And we should be talking with Russell Gray, who, of course, is an icon in the field of real estate worldwide. And he has a show, The Real Estate Guys. And he knows Donald Trump quite well. I would love to ask him a bit about this, because he was a former guest here at WHAM, and he's a very interesting guy, very decent person, and he would definitely have some great insight. So we'll try and get that going for you later on, but you may continue, John.
Yeah, well, I'm going to continue. We're going to talk about. There was an article in the Huffington Post just recently that was talking about what if, the real estate prices will continue on the same trajectory that they were, that they currently are. And we're going to look at some of the numbers and the insanity of these numbers. So they were looking at a 10-year span, and let's go and look at the house price first. And the current house price is lying around as they said, 1.6 million dollars for a house. Well, with the trajectory going in, they're looking at about $5.1 million for a house in Vancouver in 2016. I don't think that's gonna. Sorry.
Well, the government that cares so much about affordability, we care about the poor. We love the poor, so we're gonna inflate the economy. We're gonna pump everything into it, centrally plan. Circle, 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 and then here we have it, $1.5 million, folks. I hope you got a big wallet, because I don't know, most people don't. And
well. What I think
it's
is
not
gonna,
realistic.
yeah, what I think is gonna end up, Josh, is what we talked about in our London real estate market video.
Yeah.
Is you're gonna see those schemes that they had in London in order, the buy to let, the help to buy, and all these different aspects that the government comes in and gives you a whole amount of money towards your house, in order to save up. Well, where is that money gonna come from? If it comes from the government, it's gonna come from your own pocket, getting taxed to death on top of having a massive mortgage. You're gonna be a slave to both the government and to the central planners and the banks for the rest of your life. Of course, mortgage coms from mortere and it means till death.
So. Well, just a quick question, John. Do you think that what's happening in Vancouver right now could potentially go in the same direction as a place like Detroit?
It possibly could. Of course, we'll have to see where, with this big crash coming, who's going to get hit the hardest. Of course, there's a lot of resource company offices that are in Vancouver, and they're quite diversified as an economy when I looked at it.
Certainly.
They have a very well-diversified economy versus some of the other economies, like Alberta, for example, which is heavily dependent on oil. They actually have, productive people in all aspects, even resources, which is very important to Canada.
And they've got a great economy for tourism. They've got a great economy for exporting. They've got incredible diversity in the markets there where you go and there's a small business on every street, which is a great thing. So there's certain aspects of Vancouver that are definitely good. And, of course, it's going to be more propped up by the tourism than a place like Detroit would. But at the same time, when you're seeing them just constantly building and building and building, they're getting ready for something that is going to be even worse because of the excess building. So they're trying to prop it up and say, look, our housing market is fine. Don't worry about it. We'll just keep building. We'll keep building. And eventually that bubble is going to get so big, it's going to burst. And everyone's going to suffer there.
I think we're going to see debt contagion all over the world. A little bird told me that if you actually borrow $800,000 to the Quebec government, you can actually get free access and citizenships here in Canada. I think there might be a debt bubble that's going to come out of that in Quebec, with a whole bunch of money that the Quebec government, because the Quebec government is massive socialist government like France. They're very similar to France, and I think they're gonna implode on themselves. So that might be a counter contingent to what's going on in Vancouver. And I think it's an interesting point. I didn't know about this, but I been reading some reports lately, and I really appreciate that great information that comes out of it. Now, of course, I just want to look at the last little pieces of trajectory here that they talk about with condos, for example, in Vancouver. The current trajectory, it's going to go from around 900,000 all the way up to 4.05 million when it comes to condos. And then you're looking at the projections from the housing again, which was $5.1 million. Now, this is insanity. Like, we're getting to a point where the whole economy is gonna get destroyed here. Actually, the numbers that I just gave you, just to clarify, that was the average cost of upgrading from a condo to a house. The actual condo price is, of course, 490 something right now, but the trajectory is going way above $1 million. So it's going to become so unaffordable that you're just going to have a whole bunch of renters. Vancouver is going to have to create Agenda 21 150 square foot apartments in order to fit people in, like in Japan and other countries.
Yeah.
Where like it's so expensive to live that they just box you into little tiny apartments.
Yeah, and they've around Victoria, actually, across on Victoria or on Vancouver Island, there have been a lot of cases of Agenda 21 in action where there's ghost towns. It's not a good thing. But also what I've heard for a trajectory for the housing market outside of Vancouver, within BC, that there are some good there's some good examples of good places to buy within BC. I'm not a real estate expert by far, but I know that there are several places within the mountains where buying property isn't such a bad idea.
No, and never say that BC is horrible. There's always local markets, and the real estate experts knows all about this. There's always local markets, even within Vancouver and little suburbs or whatever around. There might be some little communities that are thriving because of something. And of course, that's great. But actually, when it comes to the debt and the Chinese coming in, I would just want to say, because the only big bank that really has headquarters in Vancouver is Hong Kong, the Hong Kong bank, which is HSBC. They actually have their headquarters there. So, of course, they've been bringing over tons of money coming over from Chinese investors, wanting to run away from their collectivist government that prosecute you if you try to dare to take any money out of your own country.
And of course we see bail-ins coming in, and we see so many things coming at us from all angles from a global perspective.
And just an update, just at the end of this thing, we were talking about the London real estate prices, and since we talked about them, it looks like they've gone down almost 5 to 6% just currently, and they said the property prices have dropped around £30,000 ever since the Brexit. And of course they are blaming the Brexit on this, but the problem is it's not the Brexit. We were also talking about that they were gonna lowering the interest rates. Well, they just lowered them, and now they're saying we gotta really lower them, and I think they're gonna go to negative, like we did say in our video. And it's gonna happen, guys. They're gonna go to negative here in Canada, because there's no way out of a debt bubble other than getting debt as cheap as possible until you can't get it cheaper and you can't print anymore, and then you just end up with a hyperinflating your whole system, and it collapses in on itself.
And our amazing viewers here at WHAM know well that we've been right about this kind of stuff. We've been talking about this a lot for several months now, and in some cases several years, and The fact is, this all is coming true. It's not the kind of truth that we want to give you. It's not the kind of indication that we want, but it's happening. And my bottom line for this report is that we got to stay away from central planning manipulation. It's all causing the problem that it's supposed to be striving to eradicate, but it's happening. The amount of manipulation that's put into this economy on all levels and at a global scale as well is plundering our economy, is plundering our wealth. It's causing us to basically have to pay out. We're looking at bail-in legislation written into our budget. We are looking at an insane amount of debt and devaluation of our dollar. It's all coming at us from all sides, and we need to, as individuals, say, we're not going to take this anymore. We don't want to be part of this government system where we just go around in circles, cause more problems, and maybe this time it'll be better. It's not going to be better, folks. It's just going to keep happening, and it's just going to keep getting worse. And I know this is kind of like the bad news bear kind of a thing going on here, but it's a fact, and we need to know the truth in order to be the change, and that was basically our tagline here at WHAM. And I just think that people need to go on more of a voluntary level and be able to exploit the resources for themselves as individuals, not allow some cabal to take over and say, especially at a global scale, say that we're going to take over the means of production. We are going to take over this regulatory control over every single individual to put them into one group as a collective and say this is what's going to happen, and then everyone suffers, especially the poor and the middle class and the rich. This is not okay. We're creating monopolies and we're destroying any opportunity for the smaller individual, the everyday folks like you and me. And I just think it's just a horrible thing to watch in front of us, and something needs to be done. And that comes from you, the individual, because we're just messengers. For legal reasons, we have to say that these are our opinions, but you can look into the facts yourself and see that we're not lying here. This is happening, and we've been right way too many times. I really wish that this stuff would just end. John, what's your bottom line?
Well, I think the bottom line is real estate markets will always goes up, will always go up and down, and never really trust, especially. I talk to people living in Vancouver, and I say, "Oh, there's never going to be a bubble in Vancouver. What are you talking about?" I don't know what people think when they think about that. Like, I guess they just have their blinders on and live it in, just a year at a time, and just believe that. I think everybody's becomes short-term thinkers, and we forget, the importance of actually being accountable to the future.
Yeah.
And what's going on there, because we're not now, and we definitely, if we keep on going like this and let the system implode, that future is going to be pretty bleak for almost everybody in my generation, Josh's generation, and the people that are coming and that are younger, that are just babies right now.
Yeah, it's pushing this propaganda from the media, the school system, the government, from all angles, and it's saying we're just going to ride this rainbow with on top of the shiny pony or the unicorn all the way to prosperity because the government says so. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to sit back and let them take care of me. But that's the biggest problem here, folks, is that it is bleak. The future is bleak as long as we're just depending on this cabal to take care of us, because it's not taking care of us. It's using us. They don't care about us. They're just creating control structure in order to use us as pawns to sacrifice for the king and the queen, and we lose. We always lose. They win, we lose. They love our debt. They love debt enslavement. We cannot survive on debt enslavement much longer. It's just coming to a point, the precipice, where we're just about to fall off that cliff, folks, and we need to do something as individuals, or else we're all going to suffer. And I'd love to just be like, oh, it's okay, maybe it'll all work out, but that's just not the truth. People say it's fear-mongering, but it's just the truth, and people need to wake up to that truth and accept that things are not what they say it is, what they say they are, and we need to take action as individuals.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, think about it this way, guys. Like, our parents, my and Josh's parents, we've seen mortgages. They've seen mortgages up to 18 to 20%. If you can't afford a mortgage at 1 or 2%, or barely or making it by, please don't get a mortgage.
Yeah.
Like, at least have that buffer of $1,000 in your budget every month. Because if you don't have it, if you're just surviving day to day and barely do that, what is going to happen if suddenly the interest rate just went straight up through the roof? If you had a massive failure of Canada not being able to pay their debt, they would have to raise interest rates through the roof. and then you have a complete debt collapse, and the Canadian dollar and everything else will just plummet with it.
As it's printed out of thin air, creating debt, devaluation, inflation, and that people need to be smart because the government thrives on debt. The government thrives on your inability to then take care of yourself, so then you become dependent on the government. So it just goes in circles. It all works out for their control complex, and we need to say, I'm going to opt out. I refuse. The greatest form of revolution, nonviolence, is just to opt out of the taxation system, as Henry David Thoreau pointed out over 100 years ago. And I'm just going to lay that out there, but we need to take action as individuals and demand an end to this madness. So thank you very much, John, for bringing this to us. We'll be back at you with much more. Check the links below. Donate at GoFundMe and Patreon. We can't do it without you. We do this kind of stuff for free, and all we ask is, even if you can't donate, if you could share the links around. We need it to keep on going, because independent media thrives on the individual's action and to help keep us alive, because we're not taking big corporate payouts from these big companies or giant grants from some government. So please check the links below, and we'll be back at you with much more. This is Josh Sigurdson, John Sneisen, signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.